talk about the Yamaha STAGEPAS 1K. So this is going to be like an initial thoughts video. I already did an unboxing video, and I'm not quite ready to do a full review, but I can do an initial thoughts video. I've only used it, part of the reason I'm not doing a full review is I've only used it at one corporate event so far as kind of like a fill speaker off to the side. And I've sang a lot of karaoke into it in my basement, and I've played a lot of music through it, listening to all different genres. But I haven't used it enough in the field to get a really good, product review on it. So initial thoughts is what we're going for this time. But I will preface by saying I did order a second one. I liked it enough to order a second one. And once again, I ordered it from kpodj.com. I've got their gold membership, which is actually saving me quite a bit of money. But they do have the free VIP membership too. And you can save quite a bit of money with that as well. But with the gold membership, it amazes me that I'm getting better pricing through them than I would through the distributor I get Yamaha from. It boggles my mind. So anyways, if you're looking to buy one, I do recommend ordering one from there. As I said before, I do not get a kickback from kpodj.com, just steering you to the best retail place to buy this thing if you are interested. But you might want to hear what I got to say about it first. And as with everything, I'm just going to touch on the case. I still like the big pockets in the front and the back. I was a little confused by the handle placement at first, but it totally makes sense once I've taken the cover off and put it on a bunch of times. The handle basically is where all the weight is with the columns in there, because you're not going to take the columns out of the bag before you take the cover off. I'll put one on there just for good measure. Oops. Important part of putting a speaker together. Put the column in the right direction. There we go. It doesn't fit. Doesn't fit the wrong way. But overall, I think the case was really well thought out. Putting the handle in the front where all the weight is pretty solid. It also makes for loading it up before you put the cover on. It's a little annoying to put the cover on with the columns in here, but I wouldn't lay them on the ground. I also still find these slits annoying. They put these slits in here so that they can sell you that dolly plate, and then the dolly plate, this is supposed to go over the dolly plate. But what winds up happening if you don't have the dolly plate is every time you put the cover on, man, am I gonna have a blooper reel during this thing? I'll take these out of here. They fold in when you don't have a dolly plate on it. When you go to put this on, each corner just wants to fold in, and then you wind up having to untuck it, and I find it very annoying. I wish these were just sewn all the way down. Personally, I think it would make it a better cover, but overall, I have to say it's a free cover. It comes with it. It's well put together, well designed. The slits are my only complaint. I don't know why JBL and Yamaha make dolly plates for these things. They're not that heavy. Confuses me. I can't imagine they sell a lot of them, and I just hate that they coordinate. I didn't break it. I hate that they coordinate their cases to work with a dolly plate that I do not recommend anybody buy. If you bought the dolly plate, let me know. Throw it down in the comments section. Is it amazing? I had an original JBL Eon 1, and I hated the dolly plate for that thing. Throw it in the back of the vehicle. You gotta lay it down on its side or it rolls all over the place. They're stupid. Don't buy it. Anyways, let's get to sound quality. I'm sure that's what everybody wants to know. I'm going to touch on sound quality here, and then I am going to talk maybe a little bit about the segments that Yamaha promotes, and that's just because of a YouTube comment I got about the different aspects of it. So first of all, sound quality. We talked about how this thing has 10 1.5-inch drivers. And I didn't buy this for a long time because I thought 1.5-inch drivers, they're just so small. Like, what kind of mid-range are you going to get out of 1.5-inch drivers? But, I bit the bullet and I bought it. I thought, 10 of them, you probably get some low-frequency coupling. I am going to say not really. This noticeably lacks mid-range. And maybe I shouldn't say noticeably lacks. The high end is very prominent. And not necessarily prominent in a bad way. I think Bose is who's known for column arrays the most, probably, because they're basically the pioneer of them in the United States anyways. But, there's a saying that goes with Bose. No highs, no lows, it must be a Bose. And I think, I have to imagine Yamaha just didn't want to go down that path. They wanted to come out with a column array that had crisp high end like you were listening to a compression driver. And I think they achieved that. But I think they achieved that at, the cost of sacrificing the mid-range. I've went back and forth listening to my SRM Flex and this. Went back and forth. I thought about going back and forth between my Evolve 30Ms and this, but I ended up selling my 30Ms before I did a side-by-side comparison, so I don't have those anymore. But I did a side-by-side with the Yamaha, or with the Mackie SRM Flex, and I will say, listening to like some acoustic music, this has clarity and detail in the high end that the SRM Flex just does not have. And for that matter, just that like a lot of column arrays just don't have. A lot of the column arrays out there just missing that high end because they do put a much bigger driver in the array. So they just miss that detail in the high end. I can't think of what song I was listening to, but I listened to it. It was one of the first songs I played through this. And as I was listening to it, I was closing my eyes and I could just hear like a line end, and the trailing delay was just crisp and clear. And it just sounded good. Like my first time firing this up and the first song I played through it, I was like, wow, this has some high end. And and then I listened to the same song in the SRM Flex and I was like, now that I'm listening for that delay, like I can hear it, but it's not, it's more MIDI. It's not, it doesn't have that crisp detail in it. So one thing I will say, and I have to believe this is what Yamaha was going for, was that crisp, clear detail in the high end. They wanted to be, in my opinion, the column array manufacturer that sounded like they had a compression driver in it. Just crisp, high detail. But you can tell when you're listening to it that it's missing something. But I kind of want to go through the different kinds of music because there's some things I like it for and there's some things I don't like it for. Let's talk about the sub quick, the 12-inch sub. Now I've used it primarily in my basement, but which probably is giving me a little bit of coupling down here, I'm thinking. But man, this thing's bassy. Like even just on regular mode, before you like crank the knob over to club mode makes it like super bassy. But the 12-inch in this thing's pretty freaking impressive in my opinion. The 12-inch paired to this, because this is a 12-inch column array, a 12-inch sub-based column array, I would not compare it to other 12-inch sub-based column arrays on the market. This just does not have the same output as those do. So, when you're looking at this, you're looking at comparing this to a 10-inch sub-based column array, just based on the SPL output of it. And so the bass on this is just pretty amazing compared to to other systems out there. The crossover point is nice and low, so it just sounds good in the low end. But let's talk about, first of all, if you're looking at Yamaha's website, overview, features, small band. So a lot of what I listened to was a lot of rock music, a lot of acoustic music. And I think this would be good for the solo acoustic artist in a coffee shop. And I say that because you just get crisp detail. Like, I just feel like you'd get like, the clicking pick sound coming through it. Like, you'd hear all the different details and nuances of the guitar. I think overall it would sound good. I think when it comes to the resonating frequencies of a guitar, the things that would potentially feed back in the mid-range area, kind of that, kind of howl that an acoustic guitar can hit, I think this naturally EQs that out. I feel like I'm going to make a lot of weird examples here, but, have you ever been to a concert where the PA or the line array is just screaming at you and the subs are just rumbling super low and there's just high end and low? Like, doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of mids filling it up. And, I'm talking about a big concert PA system. That's kind of how I feel like this sounds. Like, it's EQ'd as though like some touring guy on tour EQ'd a big sound system. And a lot of the guys in Fargo that have been running sound for years, this is the next bad example, they're a little deaf in the high end. So a lot of times you'll go out to a show and it'll just kind of have these like almost overly pronounced high end because they can't really hear it as well. So then they accentuate the high end more and maybe the mids aren't quite there. That's what it reminds me of as well, is like these seasoned sound guys that maybe are losing their hearing and accentuating the highs just a little too much. Now, that's a good and bad example. That's maybe the extreme of what I think the natural EQ of this thing sounds like. But I don't want to call it a DJ scoop, because I'm going to get to that in the next section here. I would not call this a DJ scoop. I think this is EQ'd for the acoustic artist because I think you get the crisp high-end detail. I think it EQs out possibly what might feed back on your guitar. And then I think you also get a little bit of low rumble if you've got maybe like a stomp box to go with it. Now, small band, the next picture is, a bass, a guitar, a cajon, a keyboard, and a vocalist. Now, I'm sure they are just showcasing all the things you can plug into this, although the cajon is not mic'd, if you look at the picture. Now, I would mic the cajon because I actually think a cajon would probably sound nice in here. You'd get some pretty good thump out of this, and I think you'd get some pretty good snap out of this. So I think I haven't mic'd a cajon with this, but I think just by the way the system sounds, I think a cajon would sound fine. A keyboard, I am not 100% sure if a keyboard would sound good out of this because a keyboard goes from very low notes to very high notes. It's got them all, right? And I just feel like you'd feel like something was missing on the keyboard. Vocals, I think vocals sound okay with this, but I also think it's going to be dependent on your microphone and your voice. When I sing into it, I definitely sound different than I do on other systems. There's definitely more high end in my voice, definitely more crisp clarity. So if you don't like that real high end in your voice, you're probably not going to like this. If you like more subdued, less high end sound, bass would probably sound fine, and I think guitar sounds fine in this. So my personal opinion, I would not run a small band, I wouldn't call this a small band system. I would call this a solo acoustic artist with maybe a cajon in a coffee shop, because this thing only goes up to, what is it, 119? Let's see here. Yeah, 119 dB. You're not going to do a bar with this thing. 119 dB is just not loud enough. And this is really where people need to not think watts equal sound. You know, watts are like gas in your car. Just because your car consumes a lot of gas doesn't mean it's fast, doesn't mean it has power. It just means it consumes a lot of gas. And that's kind of the same thing you got to think about with watts. Just because this thing can consume 1,000 watts, or the amp can potentially supply up to 1,000 watts, peak at certain points in time, it doesn't necessarily mean that this thing is loud. It just means the amp's got the ability to potentially create 1,000 watts for, you know, probably milliseconds. And, you know, they probably don't have to make sure their drivers are super efficient because the amp can push them, you know? But, you know, RMS, like, what are these getting? 5 watts a piece, maybe? There's 10 of them, so that's like maybe 50 watts. Now it does say 190 to the top column peak, so that's, what, 95? Probably continuous, which maybe would be the 45-ish RMS. I'm not quite sure. They don't really break it out like that. But, you know, you peak. You know, you're not getting a whole lot per speaker. Maybe like 5 watts. And, you know, a 12-inch speaker like this, like it says 810 watts to that 12-inch. Oh, man, I don't believe that at all. You know, if 810 is peak, man, I'd say 405 continuous. I'd guess this thing's probably getting about 200 watts regularly to the 12-inch. You know, you really, like I said, just because it says a lot of watts, it might consume a lot of watts potentially at peak, but it doesn't mean it gets loud. It just means it's consuming a lot of power. Same with gas. If I got 4 miles to the gallon in my Ford Expedition, it wouldn't be like, wow, I've got so much power. No, it just means there's probably something wrong, and I'm getting some pretty bad gas mileage. Well, you know, with things like this, you're getting some pretty bad watt mileage. It puts out 119 dB SPL peak. You're not going to do a bar with that unless it's a very small bar. But with 119 dB, you could be in a, I don't know, let's just say 100 capacity bar. If there's 50 people in it at moderate chit-chat volume level, you're probably fine. But, man, if they get a party bus, if they get a pack of college students that are hooting and hollering and yelling, and they just bring up the volume of the bar, this is just, it ain't gonna cut it. 119 is not enough. I like to get as close as I can to 130. You know, you look at the Electro Voice ZLX 12P, I would get rental complaints that they would just limit too fast, they just didn't get loud enough, and those do 127, or 126? Yeah, I don't want to look it up, but 126, 127 dB SPL. And I would get some complaints on those. But I would say you could do 2 of those, you could do a bar, no problem. It just, maybe if it's super busy, school dance, you know, it's just not going to be loud enough. But 119 just ain't going to cut it. 118 with the Mackie SRM Flex just ain't going to cut it. I did a karaoke gig, 2 karaoke gigs with the SRM Flex, and just skated by any busier, and I would have just been drowned out by the crowd. So you're just not going to do anything outside of a coffee shop, really small bar in the afternoon. I just think with a speaker like this, you're really going to run into the risk of, I hope it doesn't get busy, because if it gets busy, I am not going to have enough volume. mobile DJ. That is the next category. And I just, man, unless I was doing like background music in a retail store, I just couldn't see using this for DJing anything. There's a really small wedding venue in town where the dance floor area will maybe have 50 people, and it's like in a little separate room overlooking the river kind of thing. My Electro Voice Evolve 30Ms were loud enough for that. But that was about the peak of it. And those do, I think, 123. So 4 dB louder than these. I maybe could do that venue with these. But I don't think I would dare try. The DJ end of things, I just don't know what you would do outside of background music or speeches. Like, I would totally use this if I was in a barn venue, I was DJing upstairs, and I wanted a little more sound on the main level. Just, something, because there's a bar down there, people wandering around, I want announcements to be heard. Totally would use this for that. Would I use it for my dance floor speakers? No. And it's not just the volume that would be the issue there. It's also the sound. And the reason I didn't want to call this a DJ scoop, you think DJ scoop, high end, low end, smiley face, DJ scoop. I actually think pop music sounds worse in this than like live band music, like rock music or country music. So the things that I think sound good in this are, if I was, just playing stuff through Spotify on it, I think country music sounds pretty good in it. I think rock music sounds pretty good in it. I think acoustic music sounds pretty good in it. I do not think pop music sounds good in it. I do not think hip hop sounds good in it. It just, the vocals, just the music in general, just sounds really thin. Like the high end is just so pronounced. There's just so much missing in the mids that it sounds thin in the highs and then thumpy. So thin and thumpy. And maybe for certain EDM songs where you just want that high and low, I don't know, it might sound better, but for like top 40 pop music, hip hop, R&B, I don't think this sounds the best, because like hip hop, I always think has like the vocals just sound thicker with the way they kind of mix down hip hop music. And then this just makes your voice sound thin. So it just makes it sound not like the pre-recorded track should sound. But as far as music with a live band, acoustic, rock, country, I think they sound okay in this. But I still would not use it to DJ. Background music, maybe. But, that's probably about it. Background music, extension speaker, maybe a ceremony if you're a mobile DJ. I think this would probably be fine for that as well. Corporate AV. Now, this is what I do think I will end up using this for, and I will, like, what I'm really interested to see is this thing gonna squeal? Because they show a picture with a person standing in front of it with a lav mic. Oh, and that just looks like feedback. But this has a very unique EQ to it. So it is possible that you might get this high-end clarity with the vocals without feedback. Or you might get super screechy feedback. I am not quite sure. When I used it as an extension speaker, I used it quite a bit off to the side of the main stage, like pretty far over. And I was just wirelessly transmitting to it with a Sennheiser dongle. I had 2K10s at the stage that were already there, but they put seats way off to the side. So I was like, all right, well, good time to use this thing. And it worked fine. I didn't push this too hard. I was just using it as a supplemental fill. But, speaking through it with a microphone, singing through it for karaoke, it does give a clarity and presence to your voice that kind of cuts through stuff. So my initial thoughts are that I think it will work just fine for corporate AV. Also we could play some background music through it. I don't think 100% that the music's going to sound perfect, but I also don't think you have a whole lot of music critics at a corporate event, so I probably wouldn't worry about that too much. So I think, having not used it yet, initial thoughts, I think this will work good for small corporate AV. Keep in mind, we're talking about like a breakout room or something where you just easily want to mix. Maybe you have it up in the front with a mic going right into it. I'd say preferably a headset, maybe not a lavalier, unless it's set away from the person quite a bit. I definitely want them standing in front of this thing. But and you just want to check on the breakout room a little bit, and it's just a little supplemental extra volume. Not where you're trying to just crank this thing to 119 dB and fill a room. I'm pretty sure it's going to squeal with that. But breakout room, supplemental, just so the person doesn't have to talk real loud. They can talk their normal level and just have a little bit of sound reinforcement to help carry it through to those 20 or 40 people in a breakout room. I think this would be fine. Yeah, karaoke. Would I use this for karaoke? I'd use it for my DIY karaoke rental. I would maybe take this. There's a small bar that I've done karaoke at. It's the Spotlight Bar and Grill in Holly, Minnesota. And it is a pretty tiny bar. I would bring this there because I've used the JBL Eon 1 and it's been fine. For some reason I just didn't feel like my Mackie would quite cut it, but I think this would be just fine there too. Although I did do karaoke there once where a party bus did stop by and the JBL Eon 1 did not cut it. And I don't think this would either. Like if the bar is body to body, this wouldn't cut it either. But I think I would do karaoke with this. I plan on renting it out for karaoke. Speech, filler music, auxiliary speaker situations. Acoustic singer-songwriter, probably fine. But all those weird caveats. Why would I want a speaker where I couldn't use it for everything? So the reason I got this for myself and the reason I bought another one, like I said, DIY DJ rental, corporate audio situations, and then just maybe any random thing that I think it might work for. But that's it. I don't plan on DJing with this. If I got hired to do sound for an acoustic artist, I wouldn't bring it. I just think it would work okay for one. I got it for its simplicity. You got 3 mics in the back. You can plug instruments in it. I probably won't, but it gives me another rental option with it. Hopefully you can kind of see it, but the mixer right here, I got it for the simplicity because when you rent this to rental customers, they want to plug a mic in and they want to turn up the volume. That's what they want to do, and they just want it to work. And the simplicity of the EQ, we're going to use those for vocals, leave that flat because it's the music, turn up a little reverb, and turn up the volume and go. That is the simplicity that you need for a rental speaker. And the Mackie SRM Flex had it. This has it. There's just not much out there for column speakers that have this level of simplicity. And I don't know if I said it in the last video, but interestingly enough, this is not an analog mixer. Even though it looks like the same mixer that's in the other STAGEPAS speakers, it is not. This is a digital mixer. So it is tablet controllable. I will probably never use it with a tablet unless I'm doing a breakout room where it's up in the front and I might want to just, make some little tablet adjustments from the back. But, just the simplicity, there's not going to be a whole lot you can do. But, so the simplicity makes this perfect for me for a rental speaker to rent to people that have no idea what they're doing, which half my rental customers don't. Half the DJs I rent to don't know what they're doing with my gear. So throw that out there. So simplicity is key. And people just, not to say the general rental customer is, just not the brightest bulb in the box, but, I had somebody rent out my Electrovoice ELX 12 or Electrovoice ELX 212P. Freaking hate that model name. They could have just called it a Mark II instead of putting a 200 on there. I don't really understand the 200. But, he was like, oh man, these tops with this sub, it's just so much bass. I had to go in the back and turn the bass down on the speakers. And I'm like, well, you could have went in and under the sub, you just turn it and it has that sub model number under there and it would have crossed over the system for you. He didn't know that. And then he's like, well, one of these had the light on and one didn't. And I'm like, well, it's possible that the light's burnt out on the one, but the more probable thing is that somebody went in the menu and turned off the LED. So when you get all these like menu-driven things, people just don't know. So the simplicity is really what you need on the rental stuff. And that's why I bought a second one and why I think this will work for me. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of audio quality to have that simplicity on the rental end. Now, comparing this to the Mackie SRM Flex, which one's better? I think this gets louder. I think the bass is a little deeper. This has high end that one just does not have. This has better build quality. The other one, has the MIDI sound to it. Doesn't have the clarity. They sound different. I don't think this is necessarily horrible. I don't necessarily think it sounds better. I think it'll just work better for the application I intend to use it for. So before you buy this, you need to ask yourself, what are you going to use it for? Because if you want a column array with a built-in mixer that you are using for yourself, right at the same price point as the Evolve 30M, if you're using it for yourself, I would recommend that over this. If you're willing to have a tablet set up and do all your mixing with the tablet, I wasn't a huge fan of Evie's app, but I think that would be a good option. I would probably steer more towards the RCF JMix 8. I did own one of those. I didn't really like it at the time because I thought it fed back a little too much. I didn't think the digital mixer had enough EQ things in it. I wanted a fully featured digital mixer in there, and it just didn't have it. But now owning different ones in that same caliber, it's just things they don't put in there. I kind of wish I never would have sold them. But I did have, they had their issues. I got a lot of feedback. I think they rate those at 128 dB, which is loud enough to do a wedding dance. But I always had to have them a ways away from me shooting out. Otherwise, once I got on the mic, they just wanted to feed back. That was a big problem with those. It's just, I don't know what to say about column arrays. It seems like I never have really anything good to say about them. I mean, point source is just always going to sound better. So you have to have a specific reason why you want a column array to begin with. Do you like the clean look? Is there a reason you're going for the column array? My current plans, even though, I really want to buy an FBT CS1000 to see what it's like. I want a pair of them just to see. But I am fighting that urge. I sell something, then I want to buy something else. And I have this problem where I always think, well, if I just buy this other column array, maybe it'll fix all the problems I had with every other column array I've owned. And I just don't think there's that amazing column array out there. So I'm really going to try to hold myself to only owning 2 of these. I have my Mackie SRM Flex up for sale, and these will just be my DIY karaoke, possible utility column array, and maybe corporate AV breakout room. If I wind up doing a lot of breakout rooms, I might buy a third if I find that they're good for it. Otherwise, I'll probably stick with just keeping these two, having these two, and, you know, leaving it at that and sticking with point source. You know, I think there's good options out there for point source. I should not be babbling about different things. I'm going to chop myself off there and not start rambling about different point source speakers I'm looking at that have a column array look to them, but, you know, would, you know, there's a few tops that do like dual sixes and a horn. Pretty slim, put it on a pole with a 12-inch sub. I think you're just overall going to get better sound with a system like that than with any column array out there. So make sure there's a reason you want a column array, because it's not going to sound as good as a traditional point source and a sub. It's just not going to. DJing, stick with. If you're looking to DJ a wedding dance, this is not for you. Get an Evolve 50, get J8s. You know, make sure you're buying a column array that can at least do 125 dB or up if you want to do 100 people. If you are a small band, don't even get a column array. So many open mics on stage, I just think you're asking for trouble. Get a point source system where compression drivers are horn loaded and focusing the energy out instead of blasting it all over. Because this is, what is this, 170 on the horizontal. So, whew. And if they had polar plots, I bet it would almost look the same all the way around. But, yeah, that's kind of my initial thoughts, even though I got a little babbly at the end. I like it enough to buy two, but I'm buying it for a specific purpose. Buy the right rig for the gig. You know, speakers are not a Swiss Army knife that can just be used for anything. There's different styles, column array, point source. There are different coverage patterns in the horizontal and the vertical. Do you always need 170 degrees wide? No. If you're only using one of these, 170 degrees wide is probably a good thing. If you're using two, 170 degrees wide is just too wide, unless you're having them super far out. You know, I should make a video on how to pick the right speaker for what you're looking for, because, well, I like really thin 30 degree in the vertical. You don't splash on the floor, you don't splash on the ceiling. You are gonna splash on the wall with this thing if you're in a narrow room. You know, really wide coverage is not always a good thing. You're going to get reflections off the wall, and it's just going to bounce around. You know, always having narrow isn't good either. That's why I say, you know, you really got to find that happy medium and just find the right rig for the gig. And this is right for me in my particular situations. Probably not right for the majority of situations, though. So keep that in mind. If you have any questions, throw it down in the comments section. Sorry for babbling so much. Sometimes I get a little carried away. Also, I will say I do think the reverb sounds pretty good in this. And the fact that it has a foot switch is pretty good for the acoustic application. But like I said, if you're an acoustic artist that plays in bigger and smaller venues, this is not going to work for the bigger ones. You need a different speaker system. But if you're a DJ, if you're looking for something bigger, but you're looking for column array, RCF JMix, Evolve 30M, if you really got the budget, go for the 50M, which is the mixer version of the Evolve 50. At that price point, I just think there's better things you could buy, though. I mean, at this point, there's probably better things you could buy out there. Buy the Yamaha STAGEPAS 600 BT. Sound way better. You get two speakers. Goes way louder. That's my #1 rental item. This is a good first attempt by Yamaha. I hope they figure something out for the next one. You know, keep those 1.5-inch drivers and throw some 4s behind them. That would give some mid-range. Maybe throw some 6s behind them. Make a big old fat one with a 15-inch sub. There you go, Yamaha. That's what you got to do next. Anyways, until next time, have a good day.